up, everybody? Josue Kula here. Today I'm going to talk about software design. Yes, software design. I know the majority of developers, we don't want to hear about software design. We don't want to hear about drawing all this square and connecting lines. But we also need to recognize that we stand on the shoulders of those that came before us. They are the one that suggest that you should do software design. And it doesn't mean that we can just keep software design. And as we know, the trend now is vibe coding. You can create an application within a couple of hours, create it, push it on Google Cloud or AWS, boom. But it doesn't mean that we can check on what our predecessor have done. They used to design those square, rectangle, connecting or arrows. Sometimes it does make sense. Now, I'm not gonna do a bunch of software design because the last thing you wanna do is spend all your time designing software before going out there coding it. But I'm gonna explain why sometimes we need to do software design. So as you can see, we do have different type of payments. We have two mobile payments. We have a credit card payments and a special case, the coupon code. This is in case, all the service go down. If the mobile service go down and the credit card service go down, we're gonna default to using the token, meaning that we're gonna generate a bunch of tokens and sell it as a coupon. And if someone go on the website, they validate the coupon code and then they will be able to make. But it's not a generic coupon. There is a lot of security so that we can avoid people stealing and sharing coupon between them. It's a one-time use and it cannot be shared as soon as you seal it or you validate it's yours. You the one that have to use it. I've spoken about that. I've done a bunch of video about, coupon, special coupon payments. It's kind of boring, but if you go watch my video about this special coupon payment, you will see that there is a lot about this. Anyway, I'm going to talk about software design, a little bit of software design. I'm not going to dive deep in details about software design. But before we implement the M-Pesa API that we enable our application to make payments on behalf of the customer or using the Airtel API, we need to look at the documentation. As you can see on their documentation, for the clients, which gonna be our application, to make a payment on the behalf of the user, the client need to authenticate and get the authorization to make the payments on behalf of the client. And this is for the M-Pesa API. We need authorization as well for the Airtel, as you can see. But if we pay attention to see the way Airtel implements his authentication and authorization, comparing to the way that it, we can see it's different. It's not the same. So when we're going to implement these two types of authentication and authorization, we want to make sure that we use properties and attributes that are common, and we separate properties and attributes that are not common, that's different. And that's where software design comes into play. Software design becomes important when you want to write software in such a way that you will not only improve effectiveness, but you will also improve on efficiency, right? Efficiency in terms of reusability, sharing properties, and sharing attributes. What is so? Anyway, now we have authorization on the side on M-Pesa API. We have authorization on Airtel API, but the implementation are different. We want to make sure that we design at least the way we're gonna do authorization. The user doesn't want to know about that. The user, they're just gonna select. So what the user gonna do before the user make a payment, they're just gonna select either they want to make a payment using M-Pesa or using Airtel money. Let me do something. I can do this. I don't want to stop doing Illustrator design, but I can do quickly do something. Properties 5, color non border blue, right? And this is what's going to happen when the user they select. If the user selects M-Pesa, they want to be able to, I can even do something like this. See, I'm not going to talk about graphic design. I'm going to talk about software design, but bear with me a few seconds. We continue. As much as I love software design, I also like doing a graphic design, even if I'm not an expert on graphic design. Okay, this is what's going to happen when the user click on M-Pesa. They'll be able to make a payment on M-Pesa. But behind the scene or the back end, we want to be able to switch between the authorization of for M-Pesa API or the authorization of Airtel, so we can, you know, dynamically get the authorization, make a payments, and so forth. So now let's go drawing some square and drawing some rectangle. I know we don't like about that, but we're gonna do that tonight. So what's gonna happen? What are some operations that will be executed? What are some actions that need to be done behind the scene for a user to make a payment via our application? Okay, so our application need to do authorization. Our application need to capture some data from the user accounts or user payments data. This is not software design. This is just I'm just doing a high level comprehension, if I can use that word, the high level, you know, representation before I start doing design. And I'm gonna do a little bit of design. I'm not gonna dive deep on software design. We need to collect user data. The data I'm referring, their phone number, you know, their address, their name, so we can make the payments on behalf of the user. Make a payment. What else? We can eventually we may do some reimbursements, reimbursing user. Okay, but at the most important action or operation, they need to be happen. It's authorization and make a payment. These two. Okay, so now let's go quickly look at the documentation and see what's happening on the documentation. Okay, we see for the application to make the payments on behalf of the user, the application needs to get authorization. The authentication happens when the service provider, the API, recognize that this is the client A, this is the application A that's making the payments on behalf of the user X or N. Okay, and we're gonna have the authorization. I'm pretty sure the caching is where the payment is happening. Okay, we need the user accounts. The user accounts where we're gonna grab the balance. What else? This is where encryption happens. This will be on the behalf of. Let's start with authorization. So with authorization, before we get a token, before the client's application get a token to use to make a payment on behalf of the customer, the Airtel Money implements require that you send the client's ID, the client's secrets, and the grant type, right? If you send that, of course, you can see these concepts are OAuth concepts. But if we go on the M-Pesa, the M-Pesa require that the client's application send the API key, right? On step 5, copy the public key from so copy and save the API key and copy the public key from the below section. So the M-Pesa require the API key and the public key. The public key is the one that's exposed, you know, everybody can have that. the API key is secret. So it's kind of like the client secret and the client ID. So it's kind of similar, right? So it's kind of similar. So to design that, we're gonna use the interface. Let's use the interface. I need to share. Okay, we have our interface here. We're gonna call our interface authorization. Authorization interface. What is our attributes? We have the token. What else we need? We need the client ID and we need the client secret. Now, if we use the client secrets for all of them, we know that the Excel money does not use the client secrets. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna leave the client's ID, right? We are going to create some property, some operation. Let's say gets payments ID, payments API. What is and gets API credential. And the API credential, we're probably gonna get something like a of type string. So the gets payment API will retain something like a M-Pesa, Square. You know, let's say we are going to implement the payments for the credit card. Let's say we're gonna use Square API. We're gonna use M-Pesa API. We're gonna use Airtel API, and of course our special case API. Okay, so Square will allow us to make payments using credit card and debit card. M-Pesa is a mobile payment, and Airtel is a mobile payment as well. I think the client's ID has to be, okay, I'm just gonna leave it the way it is. So we have two properties, two operations, two behavior, gets payments API and gets credential API. Another one, we need gets token. This will be of type, okay, I was just gonna leave it get token. I don't wanna go deep on the implementation details, but I'm just gonna leave it the way it is. So what's gonna happen, this is gonna be our interface. We need a class name or M-Pesa. I need it with some property. Okay, M-Pesa, right? M-Pesa class. M-Pesa class will have clients secrets. And you might be asking your question, what is the type of design pattern that I need to implement here? We are dealing with the behavior, the way each API implements its authorization. It's not really based on the attributes. It's not really based on the data. It's based on the behavior. So I think I'm going to use strategy, which means we have authorization and we have a strategy for M-Pesa. The way M-Pesa authorize is different than the way Square or Airtel authorize. Client secrets, but they're gonna implement the same property behavior from the interface. And the interface in Python, we don't really use the concept of, I mean, we use the concept of the interface, but not really the interface. We use the abstract class whose properties has to be implemented and overwritten by the class that inherits from each. Okay, gets payments API and more. Let's create a dependency connection. So the dependency connection, so this class Yeah, my drawing doesn't have to be perfect. You understand what I mean? This class will implement the authorization, and first you can copy and paste. We also have Excel. Now, Excel doesn't have the client secrets. Excel use the API secrets. But Excel has to get the API, has to implement, get the API and gets the API credential. Let me copy that and paste some. Okay. The same with the M-Pesa. You need the Gates API credential as well, because we need to get the API credential so we can make a payment using the authorization from using the credential from in this case Excel API. We also have Square. And these are the authorization class, or we can just name that Excel. Okay. The next operation that we need to perform is making a payment. No, getting user data. How are we gonna get user data? We're gonna get user data via payments method. So we can create a class. Oh, it's getting big. It's okay. Let me go down. We can create we already have a table name or payments method. Payments method. We have the type. The type which is gonna be mobile or CC credit card. The payments method, we get the user data, user objects. What else? The payments method, we get the user, and what else we're gonna get? Name. The name of the method. Oh no, the type is mobile and CC. The name will be something like M-Pesa or Excel or Square. Now we know if we are using Square, we'll be dealing with credit cards once we use Square. Okay, what are some operations we need to make on payments method? Creates. We're gonna create payments method. It's going to get a type of payments method, but let's just say type A. No, we don't want to go too much on detail. Creates. We're gonna create a payments method. What else we're gonna do? I know we have to delete or modify. What is another method we need to use as it relates to making a payment? Get payments method. Okay. And after collecting the user data with payment method, we are going to make a payment. We already have a payment class, somewhere. I don't know if you guys can remember, but let's just create a payment. We call that payments. I'm gonna remove all the detail from the payments. I don't want to put anything, but just so you can know the relationship between the payments method and the payments is a composition, right? A payment as a payments method. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. It should be okay, at least like this. And then from here, we have to make a payment. I forget one behavior, one operation on authorization, which is, oh yeah, so we have, we authorize, we select the type of payments. When we select the type of payments, and then we're gonna make a payment. Okay. What else we need to do? Okay. Oh, why is not? Okay, I'll leave it away. Okay. We're gonna make a payment. All this is gonna happen behind the scene, but the most important things we are doing is right here. We need now on the payments method, we are going to select, because the payload of M-Pesa and the payload of Airtel may not be the same. So we need a sort of another table. It's not gonna be a table, it's a class. Oh, I see. I see. So in this class, like in M-Pesa, not only we can have a client's or secrets, we can also create a field. Let's name this was a function, or this one was a function. What is it doing here? Oh yeah, it's a function. It's a behavior, so we have to call it. This one is a behavior as well. We need to call it. Okay. Cool. When a user creates or selects a payment type, let's say they select a payment type mobile, right? And then they select and then they choose the name M-Pesa. We want to be able to generate different types of payload that's the API you're gonna use for M-Pesa. Because if we go on the API, and I'm just, freestyle designing here. I know when I will get to the code, that's where I'll figure out how I can craft it better. But it doesn't have to be perfect. And it doesn't mean also that you should skip design because you have to code and fail fast and ship it fast. Just don't make sure that you don't cook, or how we call it in Africa, ngai ngai. If you cook ngai 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 ngai, it's a sour recipe where hey, if you cook a bunch of bologna, you know what's gonna happen next. Okay, where was I? So if we go on M-Pesa, let's say we go on M-Pesa. M-Pesa, we are on M-Pesa, and the user is about to send. A user is about to send that as customer to business, C2B. I want to show you something. So what I'm about to show is that the field that M-Pesa require for a user to send, to make a payment, may not be the same as the one that Airtel Money require. So the M-Pesa require the user to send the amounts they need to send, their customer MSID, it's probably their phone number, I guess. Their country code, it's 2-letter, capital letter, country code. Their currency is a 3-letter, capital letter. Service provider, the transaction reference, or the purchase item. This is the one that the user needs to send to make a payment. And you can see this data structure. We want to be able to represent that in a way that will be unique to M-Pesa, or the way it can be like a template for both M-Pesa and Airtel. If we can't, we're gonna hard code that, but hard coding, it's not a good practice because you don't want to go back that as if you were coding with or C or the old language that didn't have OOP. Yeah, so let's name that something, that class, that particular class that we're gonna receive a payload. We might name that something like I'm gonna name that payload just for now. I can copy this class. Okay, let's name that payload. The payload, we have a feed like a phone number. This phone number can be retrieved from user profile. We don't have to insert the phone number again. We can pull phone number from user profile, copy and paste. What else? The amount to be sent, and so forth. Okay. And of course, we need the key. We need the F key from payments. Okay, it's gonna be a one-by-one relationship. The payload, I don't know how I can name it. I'll find the name, but the payload, each specific payload that we are going to use in our API plus our API to make a payment on behalf of the clients, the payload and the payments method has to be one-to-one. We don't want to hard code it. We're gonna pass it right here, copy and paste. We're gonna name that payload. So when the user is adding the new type of payments method, they're gonna insert of course, we're gonna put the records. This is gonna be automatic. They're gonna select the type, they're gonna select the name, and then when they select the name, we're gonna be able to populate a form as related to the payload they will be sending. And then they will be create. When they create that, we are going to use that on the payments inside of each one of these class as the API to make a payment. It's not perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. Design is a iterative process. So you're going to do that, as you're making progress, you're going to go back to your design and refine. But, most of the time we do design once or twice and that will be it. We're not gonna, some people continue doing design, but, we do it once or twice and that will be it. That's by design. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that's all I have. And once you design a little bit like this, you can start coding, right? And then when you start coding with a little bit of design, you will be able to do some, write some effective, a better software. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at least from here, we do some separation of property and behavior. We compose right here. We apply inheritance and strategy inheritance in such a way that all of them we get the client's ID, which is gonna be either the API key or the client's ID. Some of them they're gonna have the client secrets. So this one has to be, yeah. They're gonna have the client secrets, and they'll get the payments, and then they'll get the credential. Okay, they'll get the credential before they make a payment. Okay, that's about it on design. Now we can go code, or on the next video, I'm probably gonna start working on because I wanna emulate the way different API will make a payment before I go to subscribe. I wanna emulate the way it's gonna make payments, make some payments, and then when I'll be ready to register, and then I will start making payments. Okay, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.